Hello and welcome back to the Elsie version. Today we are in Revelation 13. Revelation 12 was talking about kind of just the backstory of how Satan got kicked out of heaven, what was happening with humanity. And before that was the second woe, the second woe, which was the sixth trumpet. And then the seventh trumpet did blow, but we haven't gotten through the third woe yet. So I'm gonna read verse 17 from chapter 12, and then we're gonna go straight into chapter 13. Then the dragon became furious with the woman. So the dragon is Satan, and I would say the woman is humanity. And went off, more like Eve, Mary, that sort of thing, and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And he stood on the sand of the sea. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea, with 10 horns and 7 heads. Okay, so this is very similar to what the dragon looks like, with 10 diadems on his horns and blasphemous names on its heads. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's. And to it the dragon gave his power and his throne and his great authority. So this is very similar to how the dragon looks, if we remember. The dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns on his heads, and 7 diadems. This thing has 10 diadems. And then he also has blasphemous names. He looks kind of like a leopard, where the other one looks like a dragon. Like a leopard, like a bear, and like a lion. And the dragon gave all his power and his throne and great authority, which is kind of crazy. Alright, verse 3. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. That's crazy. I don't know what the first beast is. I don't claim to know. It seems kind of strange. Mortal wound would make me think of like he was resurrected back to life, right? But the whole earth marveled at it. Verse 4. And they worshipped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like the beast and who can fight against it? I don't freaking know. I don't freaking know what that is. It would sound like something that like, I don't think it's just something ignorant people are worshiping. I think it's more people would be saying this, about whatever it is. Okay, verse 5. And the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It opens its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling. That is, those who dwell in heaven. So that would be Christians. Blaspheming Christians. Because earlier it talked about those who dwell in heaven, and woe to those who dwell on earth. Because that is the second one. Okay, so we're in we're in the third woe. That's when the beasts come into play. However, I think the second woe and what we're reading right now overlap. Okay, because verse 7. Also it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given to it over every tribe and people and language and nation. And all who dwell on earth will worship it. Everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. Alright, this gets back to predestination a little bit, because it says before the foundation of the world, these names were written in the book of life. Predestination and free will, can coexist. I do not understand how. I am not God. But they do coexist. It is two truths, but the Bible mentions both of them. So, those who were not Christians worship the beast. And he has been given authority to make war on the saints and to conquer them. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. That's referencing back to the beginning of Revelation, if you recall. For those who have ears, hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Verse 10, if anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with the sword must he be slain. Here is a call for the endurance and the faith of the saints. So to me, verse 7 makes me think a lot about the two witnesses, but maybe it's not. It is confusing, I must say. Anyway, verse 11. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had two horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. So I may actually say that chapter 12 may be a history. Chapter 13 may be the beginning of the third woe. Possibly. My thoughts. Okay, it had two horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. I'm going to have to say that this mortal wound is probably a big part of why they're worshiping him, I would gather, because it's mentioned twice now. And that would make me think that somehow it being healed is why people are worshiping him. Like maybe cured cancer or something like that, which, besides the point. Okay. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence. So in the presence of the first beast, it's able to do these things. All right, it only has two horns. Verse 13. So this is the second beast. It performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of all of people. And by the signs that it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, so it can only do these things in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. That's really fascinating. All right, verse 15. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. So in the presence of the beast, if they made images, he could make them speak and even not worship, be slain, which is a lot like what we saw in the Old Testament with Nebuchadnezzar if you didn't bow to his statue. Verse 16. Also it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the number of the beast or the number of its name. Verse 18. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So, I think it's really fascinating that it ends with this calls for wisdom. Because I don't think it's going to be blatant the way we think. I don't think, I mean, if you're a Christian, I think it's going to be blatant. But yeah. Anyway, so we're in the third woe, and pretty tough. Anywho, So that is the end of chapter 13. And that's all I have to say. I will see you probably later today. I was unable to videotape this last night, so